Welcome to Fantastic Vision. Please subscribe us before you watch today's video. Since Huawei's 5G global leadership, the United States has been increasing chip restrictions in recent years. Last year, it issued the strictest and most stringent new export control regulations. Later, it wooed Japan and the Netherlands and reached a tripartite agreement to jointly implement restrictions. Recently, the Netherlands and Japan have successively announced that they will implement export controls. Just when people thought that the restrictions would continue to be tightened, the attitude of the United States suddenly changed. It will extend the exemption period, and it may be a permanent exemption. However, foreign media believe that it has begun to suppress it in disguise. The United States originally mainly restricted the development of logic chips in China. On the one hand, it restricted TSMC and Samsung from manufacturing high-end chips for Chinese companies included in the Entity List. For example, the Kirin chip designed by Huawei HiSilicon could have started to compete with Apple and Qualcomm. On the other hand, it restricts the export of advanced chip equipment and technology, and hinders the development of high-end chip manufacturing in fabs of Chinese companies such as smic. For example, restricting ASML's shipment of high-end lithography machines first restricted EUV, and then restricted immersion DUV. However, under the lobbying of micron technology, the United States has added memory chips to the list of restrictions, and the relevant restriction standards have been added to the new regulations. Micron Technology, as an American memory chip giant, is also known as the three global storage giants together with South Korea's Samsung and SK Hynix, and is naturally a competitor. Samsung and SK Hynix have more market shares than Micron Technology, and they also have memory wafers in mainland China. Factory. In addition, China's storage has begun to break through in recent years, and technologies such as Yangtze River storage and Chongqing storage have continued to make breakthroughs. As a result, Micron Technology began to make calculations, lobbying the United States to obstruct the development of China's storage industry, so the United States began to restrict memory chips. However, the new regulations restrict the shipment of advanced equipment to the mainland, which not only affects Chinese companies, but also affects Korean companies Samsung and SK Hynix. Because in addition to Yangtze River storage and Chongqing storage, which are expanding their fabs, the mainland fabs of Samsung and SK Hynix are also expanding. However, Samsung and SK Hynix quickly obtained a one-year exemption period, but the expansion of the fab will take several years. Samsung and SK Hynix have been worrying about what to do after 1 year, so they have been actively communicating, hoping to extend it. Recently, news came that the United States plans to extend the exemption period. According to Korean media, Samsung and SK Hynix have obtained VEU authorization from the United States, and there is no need to apply for an export license for each project, which is equivalent to obtaining an indefinite exemption from the United States. The reason why Samsung and SK Hynix are eager to extend the exemption period is because their factories in mainland China account for a large proportion of production capacity. For example, the NAND production capacity of Samsung's 11nm plant accounts for 40% of the company's overall production capacity, and the DRAM production capacity of SK Hynix's Wuxi plant accounts for nearly half of the total output. Their expansion needs to plan the purchase of production equipment in advance so that U.S. semiconductor equipment manufacturers can arrange production in advance, which requires the extension of the exemption period before planning. At the same time, South Korean chip companies have suffered greatly due to US chip restrictions. For this reason, the South Korean government and related companies have been communicating with relevant US departments, asking the US to reconsider the restrictions. According to recent US media news, the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce stated that the Biden administration intends to extend the exemption period to allow Samsung, SK hynix, and TSMC to maintain their business in the mainland. As soon as the news came out, Samsung and SK hynix breathed a sigh of relief. In this regard, some analysts believe that the United States has begun to relax restrictions. However, according to a foreign media analysis, citing industry insiders, the United States has actually changed its chip restriction strategy, because it was discovered after several years of suppression that it did not stop China chip from advancing. As a result, the United States has begun to try to dump and suppress routines in some aspects. To the foreign media, it said, it has begun to suppress in disguise. Take memory chips as an example. Domestic memory chips are developing rapidly. ymtc's NAND technology has reached the world's leading level. 232-layer NAND flash memory is the first to achieve mass production and application, ahead of Samsung, SK hynix, Micron technology, etc. Despite the certain impact of restrictions, the National Fund has increased its capital in a timely manner and increased the substitution of domestic equipment, and it is still moving forward. As a result, the United States released restrictions on Samsung and SK hynix, allowing them to suppress the storage development of Chinese companies. Not only that, Micron technology has also started to take action, announcing an investment of 4.3 billion yuan to expand the 11 packaging and testing plant, showing its favor to China and striving for more market share. In terms of logic chips, seeing that China is focusing on the development of 28 nanometers mature process, it will have an advantage at this level. Therefore, TSMC's restrictions were also relaxed, allowing it to expand the mature process of the mainland factory to seize the share of mature processes. Therefore, this move by the United States is not a relaxation of restrictions, otherwise, how could it just extend the exemption period for Samsung, SK hynix, and TSMC, without any change in the restrictions on Chinese companies? It can be seen that the goal of US chip restrictions has not changed at all. In this regard, China must be vigilant, and must insist on building an independent domestic chip industry chain in order to completely win the future.